coming out in like July.
Hmm.
So we decided to do this new kind of promotion for us where we'd stream a song like as a single. So we're streaming, I think, 11 of the songs, not the whole record, but the almost the whole record, like in 5 week increments, and then taking them off, like Spotify. There'll be a single, and then we'll take them off. So we're releasing all this music just about, and then the whole record will be available at the end of the process. It's kind of a way to at least, in the old school ways of, in the back when you used to be on a record label and stuff, you'd have a single and then they would push it, for a limited amount of time. Well, now it's like, 12 hours, and you might spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and hours making this record, and all this time, and you'll get literally a 12-hour window to promote before people completely forget that you put out a record, right?
Yeah.
So, our response was like, hey, well, we'll just put out the record piecemeal. More people will hear the tunes. So, in all, there are 12 songs on that record, and that's called The Pink Rat. Yeah.
Mm.
And that's like a swing record. The last record we made before that was right at the beginning of the pandemic, was called Bigger Life.
Mm.
And, then during the pandemic, I wrote like 3 records. And now I'm just getting, and that was the first one. I figured we needed another swing record, so I made that one first.
No. And you talking about swing is very interesting because you've, looking back at history, for those people who don't know Cherry Poppin Daddies, you have a very long history, and you also, in the beginning, had a very controversial history
Yes, I did.
with some of the stuff, and that now looking at some of the stage props and antics back then, and nowadays that's like the norm. I mean, has that ever kind of seen how it's transitioned? You see a lot of that at general concerts now.
Well, I think, first of all, we were fortunate or unfortunate to come along at a time, which was the late 80s, the mid to late 80s, right? It was a very strange time in not only in music but in culture. It was during the AIDS crisis.
Mm-hmm.
It was the punk rock thing, was the sort of alternative rock was happening, and the Northwest was very its own little world. This is before grunge happened, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so all that stuff was brewing. We had our own culture up here, and there was there was irony, and you know, I really can't think of a time. It sort of came out of punk rock,
yeah,
and in the Northwest it was very serious, and so we had at the time it was very polarized within the scene. There were the normal people who you didn't want in your scene, right?
yeah,
Like like Kurt didn't want normal people coming to his shows. We didn't want we Our shows were for us, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that was kind of how it was. It was very um, so you name your band something weird. You'd do weird stuff on stage and keep people sort of away. You want your friends to come, but you don't want Susie Cream Cheese and Chad
yeah,
necessarily to come to your show. So you signified who you were by butthole surfers, right? You're
yeah.
the butthole surfers, right? So you were saying this is not for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is for that guy you really don't like, who's kind of a weirdo. He'll go to that basement show, so that kind of thing. So that's what we came out of. um so there was a lot of um like, for instance, Riot Girl and stuff like that came, same scene, same kind of way of obliquely dealing with, you know uh in their case, the patriarchy or whatever. Sometimes you know, I guess it's like a provocateur kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And also the bands that were, big at the time were kind of postmodern funky bands, or bands like Celebrity Skin. This really weird bands and awesome, but it's a time period, and also bleak stuff like G.G. Allen, and it's really bleak punk rock, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really strange time that has been completely forgotten about even when grunge happened, because a lot of those bands, same kind of thoughts, very Northwest. But when it broke big, it was very misunderstood by the rest of the country, the intent, and it totally screwed everything up. It's like the Doors got thrown into the basement show and everybody poured in, right?
Yeah.
And so and then the whole history of it got rewritten. So we were a part of that scene. So it was a provocateur kind of scene. We had one of the things we had was like a riding lawnmower that we fashioned into a giant penis that shot, you know,
Yeah.
things on stage. It was very we loved Zappa, there was, I came out on a giant cross, in a diaper, and stuff, crazy, crazy stuff, very provocative, sort of punk rock, but um, theatrical and sort of with screw you music, like, oh, you think we're going to do this, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
So it's constantly trying to, you know, determine what was quote punk rock and so in my way of thinking as a young person, it wasn't very punk rock to do what everybody else was doing, right?
Yeah.
That is the ultimate thing that isn't punk rock. If you're just trying to be Minor Threat, there's already a Minor Threat. Now
Yeah.
you're talking about drones, about people trying to just copy everyone. Well, now you're just trying to be Minor Threat. It's stupid. Be
Yeah.
yourself, do something different. And so the Cherry Poppin Daddies sort of grew out of that. The idea to not be trapped by one thing or the other, and to maybe explore things that had been long dead or no one would want. Like when you go to Goodwill and you find some record. Back then it was like Martin Denny or like swing records or
Hmm.
just stuff that looked real hokey and from the 50s or 40s or 78s or stuff like that. Nobody wanted this shit. And so you could fashion. I started thinking, what if I was a punk rock version of this, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then by doing that, you kind of um, developed what you thought was interesting. So the whole headspace was not for, hey, I'm going to be, a sort of capitalistic, I want everybody to love me. I
Yeah.
want Brazilian, because nobody got signed. There was no signing. Nobody even knew us in the Northwest. They didn't even know where the Northwest was.
Yeah.
So it was just for us. And so the Daddies came out of that, and it was just us finding our way and trying to set ourselves apart from other people, and do interesting music at the same time.
And that's what I found really, because I've loved you guys for a long time. I know Zoot Suit Riot was your big radio hit, but I played jazz, and I was supposed to go to college for jazz guitar. I mean, the whole kit and caboodle. So I followed you guys back and forth, and it's interesting because you didn't want to be, in a lot of your interviews, you didn't want to tour with necessarily ska or swing because you didn't want to get slotted in those, because you guys were around and were already doing big, and then there was the ska resurgence, and then they started having a rockabilly and kind of swing resurgence. And I know you guys were coming out different, doing, you do some swing and ska style, but you also do some lounge style, some very dizzy sounding trumpets. I mean, you have some very wide, and I mean, what was the truth? Were you just not wanting to get pigeonholed and people think that was your sound if you were just touring with swing or ska, or?
I think that the idea was, it was probably pretty smart at saying, hey, if the I don't want to start expecting anything from myself as an artist. Like I have to do this or I have to do that. Once people, you know, like to this day, I when I'm writing a set list, I have to go, yeah, well, this place is sort of like that, and I can't play, I can't, like for instance, I can't play a performing arts center and drive out in a penis car. You can't do it. It's
No.
not, it's and you don't want to hurt people's feelings. You don't want people to not get what they expect. But you also, as an artist, you know, I guess it really boils down to what you're trying to do it for. And like I said, we came out of this scene that was not that was for our own artistic expression and for our little community of artists. I was reaching out to other artists. I didn't care what Susie Cream Cheese thought, you
Yeah.
know. And this is at the beginning. We did have a giant hit, Zoot Suit Riot, That was 10 years later, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was like we got to the end of this particular rope, and it was like you either sign a deal and or you quit, because there was no going further to where we were. So we didn't have any money, and we made that record we had a bunch of these swing songs, and we made four more songs, put it on the record, stripped it all together, and called it Zoot Suit Riot. And they put it out, and it got calls on it. It wasn't something that I didn't think it. Imagine thinking, this swing music is going to go big. No, nobody thought that ever. Not even for 1 second. They didn't. We didn't. No one did.
Yeah.
You know.
So, and I know in some of your interviews you said you weren't part of the revival in technically swing because you used chunky guitars, you used thicker guitars, and the other thing, why I kind of look at it too, that swing revival, you go back to like Squirrel Nut Zippers and stuff, they went very old school recording, the single room, but you guys used current methods and kept the thickness and fullness. Was that intentional or?
Well, we just used the studio we had. I mean, like Zoot Suit Riot is a first take. We had like zero money. Yeah, well, here's the thing. We played it, and okay, the band played, got it. Then I came in to sing because it was a very small studio. So it turns on the engineer turns on the tape, and I warm up and I sing the song. And at the end I said, I think I'm ready to sing it. And he hits stop. And he goes, Steve, that sounded pretty good. I know you guys don't have much money. It sounded pretty good to me. Come on in here and listen to it. So we listened to it. It sounded pretty good to me. And he said, we should leave in. He said it. We should leave in. I'm not, because I said it on tape. I'm not ready to. I think I'm about ready to sing it now. Let's leave that in there at the end. As the drums are going out, and it's on the recording. That me saying, I think I'm ready to sing it now, and because it's a little in joke between us. And we moved on to the next fucking song because we had no money to record this thing. So that at that time, we had we recorded with a friend of mine's studio. We still do to this day. And then we built in a small warehouse our own studio at the time, and we recorded. Actually, there was a little bit before that. We built this cube inside of a warehouse, and we recorded Rapid City Muscle Car in that studio. We bought a friend of ours had a board. He had bought a board, so he put his board in there, and we had some outboard gear, and that's what we recorded on. So it was we've always been interested in recording, but we didn't have any money. So it wasn't. We weren't really privy to having. I did try to buy instruments. Like I traded in like this really nice Strat that I had for an old drum kit, like a Leedy Ludwig drum kit, right? To get that old drum sound or whatever. But we didn't, and like I had a little banjo, and that's about all. We didn't have access to that much in the way of vintage stuff, except in the studio. The guy who recorded us did have he had like U67, he had a 47 and a 44 and stuff like that. So we used that, of course. Yeah. But it wasn't at first. It wasn't an idea to be a vintage thing. Like I said, we were kind of a punk rock band, utilizing both things. And so the real thing was how to do it, but not do it orthodox. I mean, we didn't really want to be, hey, you should think this. You should. My thought was, I don't know. I guess to use an analogy, one of the bands like in the sort of psychobilly thing, I like psychobilly too, that I like is Gun Club, because Gun Club was like a vintage, like a kind of psychobilly band, but they didn't sound like. They sounded like they were from, the the 20s in the South or something, but they weren't trying to do that.
Yeah.
That, you know what I mean? There are other bands that try and get the vintage sound. They just sounded creepy and haunted. And I thought that's good. Somehow they're creepy and haunted. Their music was pretty, you know, straightforward, but they had the slide guitar and stuff. And somehow it just had this weird, creepy quality to it, right? Like Fire of Love, that record is really killer. I like the Cramps too, but the Cramps are way more, I mean, musically, they're way more, sort of tethered to traditions like garage rock and rockabilly, but they just play it real sloppy and shitty, which is good. And so both those bands had great feel. So I think that's sort of what I was thinking is I want haunted swing music that isn't, hey, we're doing it exactly the way that they would do it. And I am a student of that music, but that was not what I was aiming at then. And even to this day, it's not the gold standard for me is something that is not, fish or fowl. It's a little bit of a turducken, you know what I mean? A platypus thing. And so, yeah, if it had heavy guitars, that would be great. But heavy guitars are problematic because they just make a mess. And when you have a lot of instruments, it's kind of hard. So a lot of it has to do with how also a lot of music of that era doesn't have a lot of words, the singing is very short. And I wanted to tell stories. That was really an important part. I wanted to be like the Kinks, tell little character sketches, like I guess my vision was there are like the Kinks and there are like Madness and like the Specials, and they were all like working class stories, British stories, using popular music, as their kind of palette, right? So I really like that, and I thought, well, what would that be except American? You know what I mean? And I didn't want to do Americana, like the blues guy, because that had been done in the 60s, and or like what you now think of as Americana. I didn't want to use that because that pretty much had been trodden. But there were some other, like there was the Lounge Lizards were doing a cool thing. I thought, well, if I could use jazz, but not in the, because no one had done an Americana jazz thing and told stories like Gun Club, that would be great. And also, if Ray Davies wrote it, that's what I want to do, right? Or Madness, And so I still try to do that, sort of right now.
That's really interesting. And I was really one thing that really wanted me to pick your brain, and maybe we'll get you to come back to some, is you do a lot of all this composition on your own. It's not okay. There's a table of multiple guys putting it all together. You do a lot of this, and then just say, "Here you go." On it. Now, I work with symphonies and ballets and whatnot, and dealing with that many brass instruments and everything, it's a whole different. What is the complexity of that? I mean, that is just intriguing for me compared to, I know the symphonies and ballets and I reorchestrate those compared to, but actually going for the swing or big band and you're doing it all. How does that's very intriguing to me.
Well, I have to just I'm a lot slower than someone who knows what they're doing, So I know where the holes, I know the main melodies, like the lead lines is what we call it, right? Usually it's a trumpet or, trombone or, sometimes the alto sax, whatever's going to stick out in a horn section and be the top, so if you think of a harmonized horn section, there's a point on it that your brain goes to, and then the rest of the harmonic instruments kind of cascade down from that. And sometimes there's some that are very, very dissonant. And that's hard for me to, understand. I can understand normal harmonies, jazz harmonies, sevenths and things like that. But then there is stuff inside it that is, in the purview of like a horn player. What if we played this fucking note, or sometimes you can hear it in a piano and will that work? And often if you play it in a far down register or something, it really gives spice to a chord, right? But I don't know that, in my guts like horn players do. I only know 2 or 3 harmonies and sort of what I want. And then, I'll sing it out and they'll go, well, what about this? Well, what about that? What, these extra notes that really make it, not an arranger, I know what I want to hear,
Hmm.
but, and so I'll bring this stuff in and they'll make it ship shape at the end, right? You know,
Yeah.
so that's kind of how it works. It's very complicated and very slow going. And I also know the songs down in my guts before that I bring them in. So, and they don't, so I know where the holes should be. And so if you just play a song, my new song, and you're a good player, you might not know where to play. You're just going to spray notes everywhere and it won't sound good, right? You
Hmm.
have to have, especially if there's a lot of instruments, the keyboard does something here and this, it all weaves together, right?
Hmm.
So it's slow going and it takes knowing what you want to do. And because there's no blueprint for what I'm trying to do, often, guys don't know what the fuck they're doing. So I kind of have to do it myself.
Yeah. So, and I mean that's just very intriguing because you also horn players, especially quality horn players, are not easy to come
No.
by any means. So that right there, which is actually shocking because guitars, if you're still you guys are looking for guitars, have you found one yet?
We are. We are. We have an audition on the 10th. We've kind of winnowed it down to some guys and we're talking to some people and you know, it's a very hard gig.
Yeah,
And
and
that's the
I'm a guitarist. You guys, if anybody wants to audition, you got to know how to skank. All right, and skank is something I suck at. It is a type of
yeah.
upstroke and offbeat upstroke that you have to just articulate and time perfectly, or it's gonna suck and it's gonna ruin
And
every
I
song.
am and I am just super, super picky because I have to explain it's hard to explain it because the proper feel,
Hmm.
first of all, I have a ton of ideas about how one should interpret a click track. Okay. And so if you're playing to a click track, you can, if you put the skanks directly on the offbeat, often, it depends on the song, of course. Sometimes it sounds great. If you put this, yeah, directly on the offbeat, it sounds like it can sound okay, but it's can sound to my ear like it's pulling back on the groove. If you
Hmm.
listen to guys who are great rhythm players, they are on the front of the offbeat. They're
Yep.
leaning forward so that when they hear a click, it's not hearing one and two and three, and that's not how they're hearing it.
Hmm.
They're kind of here swinging to a click track. So I'll, what I think is probably 90% of players hear you know, uh, the click straight, like you were like classical music, right?
Hmm.
And that's not how great R&B players or jazz players hear it. They do not hear it that way. It's a suggestion,
Hmm.
you know? And so it only sounds like it has life if you let the click go. Does that make any sense? And so it's not only is it hard to do to play the offbeats because they're not even implied, right?
Yep.
It's hard to do. You're basically playing the hi-hat of the song. So you're a drummer with your hands, and if you don't play it in the right place, it just sounds like you're hauling a red, you know, just something of weight behind you. Is you're not helping. We
Yeah.
might as well not have you, right?
Yeah.
So
It brings
it's
a
a
weight and
really
swing.
hard, so it's really, really, really hard. And I'm picky as hell. But I can play examples. And like, can you hear this? How where this guy is
Hmm.
compared to how you're playing? The other day we were in the studio and I played for them to just before we started playing. This is what I want, and it was just some live Fishbone, song, and
Hmm.
it was Kendall was just playing. It was like he's way fucking in front of the click, but it sounds great. It gives it life. And it's just the hardest thing in the world. Or like with a drummer saying, "Hey, I want your hand. Here's what I want you to do. Your hi hat is going to be a little in front, okay?
Hmm.
But I want you to flam your to the click. I want the snare to flam to every two and four. I don't want you to land directly on that fucking click because there's nowhere to sit then.
Yeah.
There's what you're doing is you're giving me a big place to sit. You need to be in the front of the offbeats
Hmm.
way up there on the eights, and then the slam your fucking, you know, snare, and it'll sound better, right? So yeah, we look for a guitar player, but then I hit him with all this other extra shit that is to make it feel good. It's not just, or just, when you watch a guitar player play, the first thing I look at is if they're doing this. Are they playing with, I can't, if they're, are they doing this? If they're doing that, it usually sounds bad. I want to see your elbow, and if you're moving around, if your body is involved, if your shoulder's involved, then you got a chance at being a good rhythm guitar player. It's weird. A lot of guys play with their hands, and it sounds like it's lacking blood or something. It just doesn't have a physicality to it,
Now I
you
do
know.
flamenco, so I do the weird, and so
Yes,
I did. But when it comes to skanking, that right there, it is in. You cannot, and like I say, I
you
suck
got to
at
use your
skanking,
whole
but you
body.
have to use that arm, that elbow, and that shoulder. You can't just do an upstroke. It takes.
Flamenco is a perfect example of the kind of style of rhythm playing that would, that to me gets it.
Yeah, yeah, because that's based a lot. You're doing stuff on like your 11th beat. You're doing 12 beats, but the 11th beat and like the 7th, you have a weird accent that you normally don't hear in other stuff. So yeah,
Right. It's,
but
it's
yeah,
a lot of accented playing that is very Western or something. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't sound good. All I know is it doesn't sound good unless it has these elements. And it's hard to find people who, I honestly think some people are born with it. That's how they roll, and it's like great. But most people are not born with that.
yeah, and see, and I mean, I can't imagine that, like, because Northwest is huge. You guys have a very diverse, large music scene up there. So, and I can imagine with all the different stuff, because there are so many styles coming out from up there that, yeah, you're hearing a lot of horns and everything. So trying to keep and find those horn players and those guitar players, I can imagine can be difficult because it is such a ginormous music scene and so much moves so fast up there. So yeah, now another leading question: What is everything in 4/4? I've tried finding sheet music for all kinds of stuff because I'm just curious to see the actual sheet music, and I can't find anything.
Damn near every, yeah. I mean, we just do pop songs. I mean, there's nothing freaky about what we do. Occasionally the bars will be, I'll do 2 bar, 2 4 bar to turn around, but usually there's not nothing weird is going on. Usually, I mean, there could be some examples I'm not thinking of right off the top of my head, but nothing. I hear it all the time. Did you guys drop a beat on the end of this bar or something? And it's just probably that it's just going too fast that or something. I mean, I think it's the way that maybe that we construct the music too. A lot of things are going over the bar line in and weaving in and out, and it's hard to when there's a lot of those threads to sometimes tell where one is. And I think when you're listening, I mean, maybe that's why I get that but not there's not nothing real crazy. It's very Western and you know,
I was wondering because I mean, do in a lot of times you get into a lot of jazz. There's some very terrifying time signatures out there. So I didn't know how if you guys kept it more because, like I said, I find sheet music suit right, but I couldn't delve into any more. So I was wondering if maybe it was you did different timings in there. But that's interesting 4/4 because
a
you.
lot of it is pulling and pushing, like I was just saying, on the triplets or whatever. You know, like we were just doing a song the other day, and you know, I didn't want him to just do a straight roll.
Mhm,
I wanted him to, because it just didn't sound. It sounded dumb, right? And so
mhm.
I wanted it to be, it's like a producer's mindset, I guess. You started off straight, but then I said, okay, now do that drag triplet in the middle, but then but you can't just keep the drag triplet before this is a bar phrase, okay? It's like really short or 2 bars or something. And so do the drag triplet in the middle, but then come back and go straight time at the end. But, so there's a lot of that, pulling and pushing, but, you know, I'm asking people to do things that are, uh, you know, hard,
Mhm.
in order so that it doesn't sound cliche or just you have these things that you hear all the time when a drummer does, these little or something, whatever they do, and it's
Mhm.
just like I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. No one needs that. Do you need to hit the bell right there? Why are
Yeah.
you doing that? Like, let's not do that. Let's leave a hole, if anything.
Yeah.
So that can be that can mess with people's sensations of where time is, I think.
Yeah, and that is very interesting. And I like how you talked about your push and pull, and you want to do things differently. Like I love listening to how you do the bass. You don't do just the typical basic root bass line. You actually have walking bass lines and moving and leading bass lines, which is very, very I find I'm not a bass guitarist, but I find when people show respect to the bass and actually bring it in more, it kind of brings more out in the music. And I really enjoy music that does bring that characteristic out. So it was
I
that.
agree. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So you're the same way, because I mean, just hearing, because you can go listen to any song on the radio and you can hear just the basic root bass line, or
Yeah.
very basic, but to bring it out, especially. And a lot of times, the only times you heard the upfront bass when you were dealing with like a jazz or swing is when it was a big name player on that album, and then they'd let them shine. But otherwise, they kind of pushed it to the back. But you're carrying that right up front, and that is something.
And there's all sorts of problems with that.
Oh,
I
I can
mean,
only imagine.
because with us, first of all, recording an acoustic bass is so difficult.
Yes.
Okay. If you're trying, because like I am writing melodic bass lines, or like we did on the last on at the Pink Rat, a lot of it had to do with slap bass.
Mhm.
There's like 3 or 4 songs that the slap bass is critical on, right? So you need that middle part of the note to be there because these lines are important the bass line is a melodic figure in the song. It's not just a low end generator.
Yeah.
It's part of the weaving through the and it's also often it's very surprising where he's playing and what he's playing. I don't necessarily want him to. I will, like, for instance, I will sacrifice the chord
Hmm.
for him, a passing note that I want the bass to play. There will be a moment of dissonance. You will hear it, and you'll react to it. But I will sacrifice the chord for a beautiful bass line. I've been known to do that. You
Really.
know, so but usually it's fast. I mean, like it doesn't fit in the chord, but it fits in the line. If you listen to his line, it's like a really nice line, right? And
Hmm.
I could go, okay, you could change that note to something that would fit the chord that moment, or you could just let it be and let it be dissonant for that second. I mean, you're not going to notice it, but um, it's there. It's sour for a second.
Yeah.
Um, so to me, it's really, really important to get the okay. So we mixed these slap bass lines in and tried really hard to get the middle of the sound to come through so you could hear, not just feel, but hear the exact lines in these things.
Hmm.
It really took a lot of time, mixed it very carefully, right?
Yeah, that takes very
Get it
careful.
through. And then we give it to the mastering engineer, and sometimes they just jack it and then the bass goes away. Everything you've done is gone
Yeah.
because they hear it in a different way. So luckily, we had Jet Galindo she's used to work at Mastering Lab, and I think they were in New York, and then with Doug Sachs, who is just was my favorite mastering engineer. He's now deceased, but she was his protege, and now she works at the bakery in L.A. So she was great. I was really important. The bass was really important on this last record, and especially to combine those sounds. Like some of the songs are electric bass, which are more solid and easier to hear the lines,
Mhm.
and some of these, you know, acoustic bass sounds. Like you said, in the old days, they just you're lucky if you heard any bass at all.
Yeah.
Um, in a big band kind of situation. So it was very, very important. And she kept, we kept, and that we'd move it and it would be too much bass and it'd be not enough bass. And, we chased it. And she went with me on it. and I'm glad she did because it worked out real good. But yes, the bass is absolutely critical to what we because to me the bass is the animal of the song. It gives it this animal quality to it, this organic blood, this feeling of the living thing. If it only is there to generate low end, it's a waste to me. It's like a waste of this awesome strand. And what really makes it, this I wouldn't say brutal because it seems like metal. That's what they think brutal, but I think brutal in an animal sense. Yes, this thing should be careening and you know surprising, and the bass should be you know a thing.
Yeah, I'm friends with the bassist of Death on a Stick, and he did upright bass. And I will tell you, for the upright bass players, especially when they start doing slap, I have the utmost respect because I've been at shows where guys at punk shows where guys try doing it, and if you don't know what you're doing and you try slapping an upright bass, it's god awful. It is absolutely
Yes.
awful.
Well, yeah, it can be hard to you got a lot of guys set up. Like I have two basses, acoustic basses. One of them I bought for my daughter with weed whackers on it. So like if you play in a psychobilly band, and a lot of these bands play with weed whackers on the bass, right?
Mhm.
So it's easy, so you can get your hand, you don't smash your hands up. And all that is really recorded or necessary on those recordings is the snap of the strings on you can't get a fundamental off this bass. I mean,
Yeah.
I can hear a fundamental alone in the room, but when you record it, it's gone. You just, all you're hearing is guitar and somebody go on a bass. But what they're trying to do is make these kind of comic book 50s, you know, uh, haunted 50s comics of songs, and which I really like. I think it's great. I love that stuff. But the sound of it is not capturable. Usually these bands have no, budget. I mean, very few of these bands have ever gotten recorded properly. I can think like the horror pops did. There's a few who got the bass recorded somewhat properly, and it's hard, hard, hard. So mostly it's a difficult thing to do, but the slap bass gives you a feeling of uh, it's like walking into an old house. You know what I mean? It's cool. You go, wow, it's extra okay. Acoustic slap bass gives you kind of a shaker, a maraca snappiness, and you get this, if you record it correctly, you get the fundamental notes and this shaker. So it's a bass with, or like slap bass, funk slap bass, you get extra stuff, you know. So the cool thing is you're getting this shaker that's subdividing and the fundamental note. So you can slot ting, 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 you get the cut and the boom, both things. So I mean, it's really, really exciting to work with it, but it's incredibly difficult, and nobody wants to learn it.
Yeah, and I mean I sit in soundproof room with the monitors or the AKGs on it or whatnot a lot, and that's just it became a hobby of mine, just nitpicking songs. Like, yeah, I say nitpicking, I say really breaking them down just in my spare time for fun. Sit there and just zone out and hone in. And I've done it with a lot of your songs, and it's just hearing the different dynamics and listening to them through studio monitors and monitoring headphones and midfields and everything for people at home. What we use for monitoring and mixing in the studio is drastically different than what you're going to go put on your shelves. These
Right.
monitors, they look like speakers. They are not. They're drastically different, and there's a reason they cost an arm and a leg. So
Yes.
normally you don't listen to music for fun and break down like I do, but I do. But it's very unique listening to like how you have your stuff mixed, mastered, how you have the entire uh, everything from the writing to the mixing and mastering. It all just forms. I don't know, and that's why I wanted to pick your brain so much is because how you've got it. You've got multiple horns. You've got the tribal drums, the toms, your vocals, which you have a very unique timbre to your voice, especially being the style it is. So then you have to add that into the mix, and it's just how it all comes together. Even if you were a person who did not appreciate this style of music, you would have to at least step back and appreciate the musicianship, the talent, and skill that goes in to be able to create, something that cohesive with a group of people, especially and get it sound good.
Yes, it's an architectural kind of, mentality, really. You're building a foundation and then you're trying to finish it, and it's a lot of work, and you have to have it fully formed in your head all the way, because you'll be, as you build this thing, it gets destroyed by by people misinterpreting it or reinterpreting, or maybe they're adding something to it here and there, but you have to know whether they are, or it's going to make a mess, or somebody needs, I want to do this, or what, in a big band, you can't do that. Not everybody can solo all the time. You're coming in right here, and this is your little segment, right? We're going to bring you out of the mix here.
Hmm.
So, and I need to tell you that, like, you can't miss this note. You can't, this note, these four notes are where you're going to stick out of the horn section.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull you up here. So, and I'm going to pull you back here. So, if you're concentrating real hard on bar 53 and 54, don't, I need bar 52. That's the one I need. I want you to concentrate on that. Don't worry about 53 and 54 as much, or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's
So,
a big thing that is in your mind, like a movie, right? It's like a movie. It's a big fucking thing. What is it? Each song about? Where does the song appear in the album? You know what I mean?
yeah.
You can't lead with this song. Like a song is like on the next song that we're gonna on at the Pink Rat that we're going to stream is called "Shooting Bullets at a Bell," and it's it's a whole world. It's not a simple song. It got. I wanted to write something, so I read this book about Fletcher Henderson, about this musicologist running Fletcher Henderson. Is wonderful about his compositional style. It's a musicology book, right? And they talk about writing inside the strain and outside the strain, compositional styles, the different members who came in. So basically, it's about pre-swing hot jazz and how, in the era of, like, say, the Harlem Renaissance, like during Cotton Club, Club Alabama, and these are pre-swing. So dance clubs aren't there yet. No, people aren't going out to dance like they do during World War II. That doesn't happen yet. Like Benny Goodman, essentially, Fletcher Henderson joins Benny Goodman band, and then that sort of begins the swing movement, right? But before that, there's Paul Whiteman, and then there is Duke Ellington and Fletcher Henderson and those bands like that. And what they're doing is they're playing a kind of a Art Deco jazz, right? It's hot jazz that's influenced by classical music, right? And it's very different, it's very weird, and it's not dance music, it's very, like I said, there's a classicalness to it. That's all I can think of it as, Art Deco music. So I thought, I read this book and it was very interesting, and I thought, how can I do something like that? That's not swing music, but it's like sort of architect, because it's sort of, I relate to that, right?
Hmm.
And so I wanted to make something sort of like that. And the key that they would use is, they used all sorts of weird keys like F and stuff like that. And this song's an F.
Hmm.
And so, okay, so I wanted to write something like that, but I also wanted to write it about the threat to democracy in the United States. Okay, so how do you do that, right? How would you do something like that? Well, it's very symbolic, right? The idea is that it's a, a member of the citizenry who is observing his fellow Americans or citizens from a distance. That's the first thing I thought of. Is like, okay, so he's like, they're ants to him, and he's looking at them through a magnifying glass, right? Like he's checking out their movements from magnifying glass, and so then he takes the magnifying glass to the sun and melts the ants with the sun. It's this idea of being critical of your fellow, you know, citizens, right? And then I used the image of uh, um, this is ascetic from the 400s named Simeon Stylites, and he's sort of famous. Like people, penitents from all over the Christian world would go to Syria, where he had camped out for 40 years on an abandoned Greek pillar to live in abject poverty, you know. And so they would do this. They would come to see this guy, Simeon Stylites. So I used this Simeon Stylites as another symbol, as how he's, because he's up high, 40 feet, this pillar was. He crawled up on it and lived there, and they'd send him up food, and he'd just eat and live his entire life on this pillar, right? And people would visit to, and pray to him and stuff like that, whatever. But the same idea is at a distance, okay? Now, the title, Shooting Bullets at a Bell, is from how someone described Bix Beiderbecke's coronet sound, like shooting bullets from a bell, right? So like as if his tone was so sharp and pure that it was like, like a shooting bullets from a bell. That's what they would say. Okay, I thought, shooting bullets at a bell. That's what it is, shooting bullets at a bell. And so I thought the Liberty Bell, the cracked Liberty Bell. Now we're getting somewhere, right? So I sort of made this kind of symbolist poem, right, with these interesting, weird pre-swing jazz ideas, and I kind of wove it together. Okay, that can't be the first song on the record.
No.
Because it's too weird, right? It's too much. People will like it, and they won't know what I'm talking about, right? It's just this weird, it's a poem, right? It's not a song about something where you're planted in reality and you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes I do that. Oftentimes I do that. But this one is kind of elusive and oblique. That needs to go on side 2, right? That needs to go somewhere in the middle. And, and you got to know that ahead of the game. You got to know it's important. It's really important on the record to me, because it's the most experimental, it's the most out there. It also has the most, import. But I do not ever say, this is what like I say things like, I talk about Philadelphia and organized crime and stuff like that, but you don't know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The people are not going to know that this song is about now.
Yeah.
And even though it's this weird freaking song, they'll just dance around to it and whatever. It's like Drunk Daddy on Ferociously Stoned, or it's a song about child abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And abuse, right? But it's this, long, swing song with a lot of parts, and the song unfolds gradually. You don't really know what the hell's going on until about what I call the Fibonacci moment of the song, when you start realizing, holy shit, he's being beaten. It's like that. So
Yeah,
but
that's very interesting following that.
yeah. So that's the kind of you got to have these things in your head. I guess I'm like writing a small novel when I'm making a record. It's like I'm not trying to get, I'm not trying to be whatever, some popular, artist. I know I'm not going to be that. I'm in swing music. The stuff I like is all, cul-de-sac genres that people like to make fun of, right? That's the perfect stuff to use for me, right? It's like using discarded, stuff at the, like going to the, like if you're a sculptor or a welder and you go to the trash and you get like, oh, I'll weld this into a bowl. I know a friend who does these kind of things. He
Yeah.
goes to he welds, these magnificent animals out of these car parts and, metal and things like that. That's sort of what I'm doing, except I'm using trashed genres from the past. And so I'm welding these trashed genres from the past. I like, glam rock and glitter rock and, stuff that nobody gives a shit about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to see if I can make it into something that is good and current. And I know where I live. I don't live in France. I
Yeah.
live in the United States. We're fucking blockheads, right? So there's going to be 7 people who like it. I already know that. So, you know, all this is taken into consideration when you make a record. I know it's a waste of money. I know it's a waste of time for anyone but me, but there are 7 or 8 people out there who are going to appreciate it, and going to go, I wonder if he knows that this is about this, you know what I mean? Or whatever, hopefully there are, it's like I'm reaching out through the masses
Hmm.
for certain people, who are going to like the whole bit of it. And then there are other people who just like to dance and they're going to be able to go and they like the tune. Maybe they're humming the tune, but there's this other thing that's, if you listen to Shooting Bullets at a Bell, there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can glean from it
Hmm.
if you choose to, but you can also ignore it if you
Yeah.
want to. You don't, it doesn't matter. You can just dance around to it.
And I find it just, the more we talk, I just find it more interesting, especially on the composition and everything. You talk a lot about dissonance, and yeah, that, and then we'll come back to the album because there is a certain way you have to do. A lot of people don't know that there's a way you have to do your tracks on an album to get it to flow well. But dissonance, so many people look away from that now in a lot of songwriting, and that is a very that can really add to your piece. That dissonance. There's
Talking about
sometimes,
dissonance.
yeah, yeah. There's the songs, and I think maybe we'll pass that over today because that can add so much draw to it. Just that odd note, that accidental. Maybe just somewhere in there
Yep.
that just brings
Or
everybody.
when also timing and where the thing appears, where
Yes.
it happens. You can't just lead with, it's like a movie. You got to build to this, maybe you have this scene
Mhm.
where something really is going to happen, right? Like the important part of the movie. I watched this movie the other day. What was it called? Gun Crazy. It's a 1950 film noir, right? It's on
Mhm.
Criterion Collection. They're doing this noir, and I love noir, right? Well, it's kind of you can see the scene that they thought this is the best writing in the whole movie right here. And they just, it was the whole idea for the movie. It was beautiful writing. This girl, like this guy is trying to impress, he finds this girl and he's trying to impress her, but she's kind of a spider lady and she wants things in life. She grew up with shit and she doesn't want this to be her life and she wants him to be a criminal and get her things, right?
Yeah.
And the way they say it, that the whole writing movie was about this one scene. Well, that does not appear at the beginning of the fucking movie. You have to learn this guy's actually a good guy, and he's da 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 da. And then all of a sudden you get to the scene, he meets the girl, da 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 da. Finally, they get married and everything's great, but then it really comes down to who she is. You
Hmm.
know, she's a person, she's gonna split unless you decide to do crimes with her because she needs shit. And it's the best writing, right? That has to appear at the Fibonacci moment of the movie, right? It's like, what is this movie why am I watching this movie? Oh, now I know,
Yeah.
right? You travel to that spot. So like dissonance, that, these moments of, like dissonance can be like, if you imagine like watching a film noir, you're walking, they're walking together and then the weird shadows appear. Maybe nothing's happened yet.
Hmm.
But why is there fucking shadows there? Why is it all dark in this and in this, shadows cutting across his face? Well, something's gonna happen, you know. You it's the beginning, it's the foreshadowing of shit's gonna go down,
Hmm.
right? And you can see, maybe you won't sense it, maybe you won't even notice it, but you'll notice it later on. You'll go, oh, that's why there was shadows then. That's why that happened, right? So it's just like a movie. These things appear at their time, and you can you got to pick your spots, and you can't tell everybody everything.
Hmm.
You have to couch it in mystery. You can't just let it all out because then it's not art. I have to make you discover it. You have to feel like you just walked in on this music and you go, that's why hopefully you go, I wonder if this guy knows what he just did. That's what I want. I
Right.
want you to think that. I want you to go, this guy's like he's an idiot savant. He's doing something great, but he probably doesn't even know it. That's what I want.
It's and that is it is very awesome. You look at it from the artistic point, and real fast you keep saying you're not doing anything popular. You know you're not popular. You didn't want popular music. And can you please let us know how many platinum records you
Hmm.
you have since you're
I
not so
have one
popular?
platinum record. I do have one platinum record. Yeah, but there are I mean, I'm not trying to be coy, but I don't write for that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's not why I wrote Zoot Suit Riot. You know what I mean? That's not what was going on. I wasn't thinking. You didn't. If you don't believe me, put yourself in a position of being writing swing music in fucking early the late 80s and early 90s and thinking that would get you anywhere. That's ridiculous. People didn't when we first started playing. People didn't even know what it was called. Much less. I mean, even amongst the bands, like you said, Squirrel Nut Zippers and Royal Crown and all those bands that do similar things, they had a very, Squirrel Nut Zippers a little more had different, they were more experimental, but the other ones really kind of wanted something very orthodox, and that pretty much simple, a simple time for one specific time frame. Often they're thinking about like the jump blues period, like for instance, like 1950 kind of mental mindset. And that's what they called swing music or whatever. Jump blues is what they were saying. But they weren't thinking from the whole, they didn't care about 1928. Maybe the School Nut Zippers did a little bit. School Nut Zippers are a little more interesting as far as what they draw from, right? I mean, interesting. It doesn't matter. It's not that they're interesting. All of them are interesting, but they just kind of trying to do something that isn't. It's so hard to get people to understand what you're doing in the first place. You know, if you're doing old music, because people, like for instance, people don't watch old movies. Okay, for one thing, I'm probably one of the few people who will sit down and watch film noirs. That my daughter doesn't like them. She doesn't want to see it. It's black and white. I don't want to see it. Right?
Yeah.
That's most people. They don't want to see it. They don't care. They don't think it's a good movie. They talk funny. They don't. All they think is, yeah, I see, yeah, right, see, yeah. They come. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
The shtick, but they can't see the art in it, and or how it could be utilized. Like I'm saying, I'm in the junkyard.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do that's like today? I mean, what's to like today that I'm not going to make a film noir today, you know what I mean, kind of thing, but I can if I'm smart and I sort of use these elements that are inside it,
Mm-hmm.
like for instance, if you look at film noir, the whole point of all film noirs is that life is brutal and short and we need to get on it right now. Like they came out of World War II, and the whole world was exploded, right? They saw horrors. Then they came back home. The girl that they left when they were 17 doesn't like them anymore. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
they fucking can't. It's like after Vietnam, they can't be in society. They've done horrible things. They've seen horrible things. The world doesn't make sense anymore. And this turns into film noir, right? Well, we're in a period like that right fucking now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know, there are things that I can glean from those movies that I can use right now. But like I said, I don't want it to be obvious because then I'm doing false, like going back to my punk ethos. If
Mm-hmm.
I just try to make a new film noir, what am I doing? I got to make it new. I got to try. I got to push myself.
That is a very very interesting. And now, like we do a lot to focus to help people who want to make a career in the music and film industry. And one thing that doesn't get talked about actually is albums and your track list for albums and how they're set up. Because so many people just dump a single here and there. That has become the norm, is people releasing singles, but there's not much talk on how you actually need to do a track list on an album. You can't put track number one your most experimental. You can't put track number one your hardest. You have to
You
kind
have
of
to
like,
get them in.
yeah, exactly. It's like a seven-course meal. You start with that appetizer and build up to the finish and then everything. And I think, and that's actually, I'm excited you brought that up because that's something people really, it's really, from even in all my years, and I've been in this for over 30 years, it was never really talked. It was just assumed you knew, or if you bombed it, they're like, yeah, you did your album tracks wrong, you know? So,
It depends on what you want.
mhm,
I think that's the thing. It depends on, this all boils down to what you want as an artist. And to be honest, most people want, I think, honestly, I think I did this interview. Someone asked me to interview. I don't even remember the person who asked me. This is years ago. She said, "Would you? My daughter wants to interview you for her school." And I said, "That's totally fine." She said, I said, because, oh, she says, because she wants to be a singer. And then she says, she wants to be a famous singer. And I said, okay. And the little girl asked me, I said, so you want to be a singer? She said, no, I want to be a famous singer you know I was like, okay, but what about the actual singing? What about, let's talk about singing and all that stuff. But she wanted to be a famous singer. And I think that a lot of people are attracted to the attention and the camaraderie, the acceptance of a group of people. You know, I don't know what it is, but they don't aren't interested in the backbreaking labor that is this making this shit, and to make something, or to make something different, when it's really a lot easier to be like, say, to the worst case scenario is a cover band, right? So you're in a cover band, and you're not him. You're not Pete Townsend, dude. You're a guy playing the song, Pete Townsend's song, right? And
yeah,
Pete Townsend's Pete Townsend, right? But that's what you wanted, to get in front of 150 people and do this, right? And that's a fuck of a lot easier than going through the try thinking something through and taking a lot of false starts and not getting there, and wasting your life, essentially, because that's what all of us are doing right now in the music business, because the people who run this business have no fucking idea or interest in us living, you
yeah,
know, and
yep.
so it's going away, this whole thing, right? Which is also, from my point of view, as a guy who still does it, interesting, and I can use that, right? I don't know what I would do, but this is a art form that is going away.
It's things are really changing within the industry. I can say that, and it is. You talk about bringing stuff new, making it old and new again, rather than just taking the easy way out, and which is very true because so many people want to just get the fame of being in the industry. And I know for you, example, you
It's
went
not going to fill the hole that's inside them. It's not
exactly.
going to fill it. It's a
And
dead end.
you step back and you went bad. You were like, you went the opposite. Most people drop out of college to go join bands. You're like, okay, I'm done. I'm going back to college and getting a degree, which was
I
really,
did.
really that's awesome right there because that's normally the other way around.
Yeah.
So, but sit there and I know some of that you just kind of the notoriety was kind of just like building up on you from some of the previous stuff. It was just constant notoriety was kind of draining on you.
Yes. Yeah, it was. I mean, people are not going to want to hear me talk about how, having a successful music project was draining, but it just is, because, like what we were talking about, how people are, you have to know ahead of time how people are going to react to you, right?
Hmm.
It's part of the deal. In making an art, and making your art, you have to know how people will react. You have to know what they are gonna do, right? And I have known from the beginning how people are haters. You know what I mean? They're born. A lot of them are. Some people are on your side, but they have to figure it out if they're on your side. You
Yeah.
can't tell them you're on your side. They have to decide that they're on your side, right? Um, So you have to fake them out, you have to kind of, this is not a job for somebody who is, um, like, okay, let's say you're a normal, like J Lo. I mean, right now she's going through this. People hate her now. Okay, I'm because she did. I don't know. She's doing a typical celebrity thing where she's trying to do a vanity project, and I don't know, whatever. She doesn't understand how to work people. She needs the attention, and so she's going for it or whatever. You gotta know when you're a celebrity that they may love you. It's like that scene in King of Comedy where Jerry Lewis goes to he's like at the phone booth in New York, and he's a famous comedian, and he's
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the
I
phone.
know, yeah, I know what it is. Yeah, so,
But it's, if you've seen this scene, he's on the phone, and the lady comes up to him and he says, "Oh, can you sign my?" He's not like on the phone. Just a second, lady. It's like, he's trying to talk on the phone. He's like, "My daughter's totally loves you." She's talking to him on the phone, and he's like, he signs the autograph, and then she wants more, and he's like, "Lady, I'm on the phone," and she said, "You should get cancer." You know what I mean? There's a sense of people don't really love you. I mean, they want to see you fail. Also, they love you, but they hate you. J Lo doesn't realize with every bit of notoriety comes the other side of that.
yeah,
It's like that's how it works. It's not you got something that they want, and unless you do everything for them, unless you cut yourself into little pieces for them, they are going, at some point, you're going to get hated on, and this is, and now in the world where everybody's a celebrity, like Warhol said, social media, everybody's a celebrity for 5 minutes. Well, your social media account makes you a celebrity, right? You get it. You get the shit. You did something wrong today. Somebody decided something's wrong. And, it doesn't matter if 100 people think you're great. There's going to be five who think you should be fucking thrown in the chipper, right?
yeah,
And that's going to ruin your day. And it's ruining a lot of people's day out there. But you got to know that ahead of time. You try and push them, you know, do start, like I started my career thinking, I want you to hate me. Let's
yeah,
start from that. You hate me, okay? And if you start from that place, um, maybe you can find your way because at least you're not surprised. People are going to, I've had hot coffee thrown in my face. People say your band sucks from the, whatever, from the window of the car. I mean, but that's not, now that's normal for everybody. Everybody's a celeb now, you
yeah,
know. Everybody hates you. Oh, you're wearing your mask. And you went to the store in a mask, and what a dipshit you are. It's like, well, my wife has cancer and she's immunocompromised. That's why I wear the mask, but I can't stop each one of you and say, I continue to wear the mask because my wife has one lung, you know.
yeah,
They just hate. They're going to hate. They're haters. That's the world. So when you make art, you have to know how people are going to react and what shitheads they are, and also what they're capable of in a good way too. There are people that are fucking amazing out there and interested and interesting and can make interesting connections from far off things. They're so smart. If you go on TikTok, just see how many smart fucking people are out there. They're not just the people that are on TV. It's just like some dude from your fucking neighborhood who knows a lot about something, and can articulate it.
yeah.
They're so people are both miraculous and garbage.
I can see that. Now, that is like you were talking about how it puts you through. Mental health is actually something we talk about a lot on here, especially like people don't want to hear me complain about making a hit song. It's like actually we do because there's so many people who come into this one dudes don't realize it's mental warfare throughout the process because you're worrying about A, B, C, and D, and if you screw up, well, it can affect here and there. And so that's something we freely talk about is how mentally demanding this industry is on each aspect, whether performer, producer, writer, whatever. And so, I mean, it was and actually in an odd way, like you say, taking conscious wise, it was actually good hearing you were stepped away from that. So we can talk about bring up to people want to do this. This is hard. This is mental hell. You are in a mental financiers, label depending on what's going on. You have to impress, keep going. You have to impress the popular and keep known. And then you have to try and stay true to your art and yourself and try and not compromise your art and that whole process. So
And
that's what.
there's no money to actually get people to come on board with you. The only way, the only reason you're talking to me is that some corporation at one point deemed us, that we got knighted by some fucking stupid corporation at one point, and that's the only reason you're here, right? So it was, people don't realize. I mean, it was my hard work and stuff like that was that. But I'd still be the same person, had that not happened, right? But that really happened is the powers that be, Nabisco of music decided at one point to get that my thing was, enough people called in on it and thought it was intriguing that they were going to, hey, well, let's put some money behind it, right? And that's the only reason. And that's the thing. Now everybody chases that corporation. Please, corporation, tell everybody they should listen to me because, then I'll be able to do something that really helps. This music, what I do, is my lifeline to dealing with a hostile world and a absurd existence, and contribute something that is going to be washed away and is already, but it washes away as soon as you make it. It's fucking stupid and pointless. It's absurd, in an existential sense, right? We make this music. Nobody gives a shit about Cherry Poppin Daddies. They don't. I'm the only one. So it's for me, and I'm trying to do the best I can, and sort of this prism of threads and put it into something that makes me interested or intrigued and is different in some way. So that if I picked it up, what the hell's this in the bargain basement bin? Well, who the hell's this band, 40 years from now? What the fuck was this? What was this thing? Maybe not, probably not, because of the way the world's going. Who's interested in weird things like I am? There are not very many people.
You know what? We could probably find some interesting stuff. You just look up some people's search histories. I'm pretty sure there is. So I mean, it's just really hearing. It's always refreshing hearing artists and musicians who stay true to their art, such as yourself. I've had several other people, and they're just very true to their art. You know what? I'm gonna do it. Screwed mainstream, screw labels, because there's also a lot of trash talk on labels. I'm
Yep.
sorry. I grew up in that time where your life was you either lived or died by a label. There was only a handful of them. So there is a lot of that, which you dealt with labels during that time too.
Yep.
With all of that happening on now that so many people are going independent and self-published, what do you think that has done for like the music we have access to now? Now that your kid next door can go to CD Baby and have their album released to iTunes and Amazon and all over. What do you think that has done for the music industry at all?
I I listen to a lot of stuff. My daughter's young and listens to stuff, and it's often her tastes are interesting, in that she likes complicated. She's like her old man. She likes complicated, strands. She can hold a lot of, inputs in her brain at the same time, obviously. But I think that there's a sense, when I listen to a lot of it, that it is, there's not a sense, like a lot, like, I don't know, you'll hear chord changes that are cliches, but in not a good way. You'll hear production values that are, I mean, I don't know, I don't get anything from a lot of it, I mean, so, um, so I think it's good that people can approach this world, but maybe it's too easy to put something out. So, maybe it's too easy. I mean, maybe that's what I'm saying. It's like if everybody can publish their own poem and it takes them 15 minutes or whatever, that's not going to be as good as something you labored over for, it's the obstacle. Here's what it is. The obstacle is the path. And it just doesn't sound like people had enough obstacles. And, it should take years, to make something that is good, That sounds stupid, but it doesn't sound like it's taking, there's, just because you're mad or just because you feel sad, that's not enough, to make a good, in my opinion, to make a good, I mean, someone could make good art out of that. Kurt Cobain did some great stuff. Heart-Shaped Box is a wonderful song, great song, but that was a different era. I don't know. I don't think it's that good. I don't hear a crazy amount that's good. And it's not that it's the technology, I don't think. I think it's the ease that everything, it's too easy. And so therefore the commensurate effort that needs to happen to make something, to really turn something, because you turn it inside out. You have to think through this thing for a long fucking time to make it work. It's not just something you poop out. Nobody poops out greatness. Nobody does. And it feels like people think that they like to smell their own farts is what it smells like, to me. And it needs to be harder, I don't know, maybe that's just the old fartness coming out of me, but I don't know. I'm not. There's good points. I mean, obviously, you can reach a lot of people with your thing, but if people don't have a basis to understand what you're trying to do, sort of like the most average thing rises to the top. Something that's just kind of not worthy. Like it's like you're not going to have a Shakespeare or a Nabokov. You're going to have like Sidney Steele or whatever, or James Michener. I don't know, like just regular old people who appeal to regular people, which is nothing wrong with that. I mean, regular people got to have their art, and that's okay, but I'm looking out for something that's really distinct and fine. I don't hear a lot of that happening.
That is very, very, very interesting because I know it does. It expands a whole lot. There's genres of music out there I didn't know exist that anybody can tiptoe. There's a gentleman whom his records are made from. He makes his instruments out of the owl pellets he finds and turns them into instruments, and then uses those for all his music. I kid you not. That really, really wild story on that one. But so sometimes there can be. It's like, okay, maybe you shouldn't. But it was my curiosity because there's so many more people coming on, creating and releasing music nowadays compared to where you had to really.
I mean, in general, I think that's good. I mean, like I was just saying about TikTok, you find these people rather than, like just taking television example, these schmucks who are on television getting paid, millions of dollars. They're no smarter than this other guy on TikTok who's, just he's telling the truth too, or whatever, so and musically that is similar, I would think. There are people who would never have a sniff of, maybe of in the old days, and maybe they're getting their stuff out there. Okay, but that's making a TikTok post is a lot different than making a feature-length movie or something like that. Yeah. And it's very different. Or a record. It's a very different set of chops. And I don't see much of that happening.
Yeah. Now, something other that had me curious. Were you trained? Did your voice come naturally and you just fluidly pick up the lounge and swing? Because there's scat and everything in there, or is that something you actually were vocally trained on?
No, I don't have any training, and I don't even know. It's that's the thing I care about the least is
Really?
the vote. I mean, I do care about the stories, but it's like uh, usually the exhaustion. I get everything done, and that's the thing that it's on there that I let be worst, unless it has something to do with you know, I mean, I guess I'm trying to tell the story, and sometimes I fall in love with the shittiness of the vocal or whatever, but I shouldn't. I should take more care. And on certain records, I have taken a little more care, just because of the nature of it. But yeah, no, I don't know what I'm doing. It's just, in fact, when I first started, I was the guitar player, and we had a singer, and I just felt like he was using too much vibrato. I wrote the songs, and it just wasn't appropriate to the stuff I was writing in my head, and I went, ah, shit, I guess I got to sing, and try and do this at the same time. And so I started singing, and I can carry a tune, okay, but I'm not a, good. I mean, not. I have to work at it to be good at all. So
That I was just curious because I know a lot of people get trained on the scat sounds and everything because that is very much a tongue twister right there. I'm not even gonna lie and say I can do that because it's very much a tongue twister. So I was always curious because your voice also does carry. I know you in previous interviews you talked about you try to do different lounge styles and everything, and there is a lot that you're carry through those styles and genres very, very well. So that's why I was very curious as to how if you ever did have any formal training. So now you do have a show coming up, and it is the 13th. And tell us a little bit more about that. I know you've been posting about it, you've been talking about it. So it is in Bend, Oregon, and
yeah,
God, where it was at? Geez, where
we're
was it?
playing we're playing the 12th in Salem, Oregon, and the 13th in Bend. So those
Bend.
are like nearby places to where I live. So those are just regular old shows that we're going to be playing. Like we're playing a swing set. Like we'll do these. Sometimes we'll play shows that are ska. Like the last time we played in Bend, I think we were playing. We were getting ready to. I had been writing some of the stuff that I'm doing now, which is the ska stuff, and it said, "Oh, you know what? Maybe we'll play ska there." And so we did a whole ska show. Big long ska show, totally different. I don't even think we played Zoot Suit. Maybe we played Zoot Suit Riot, and that was it. Other than ska, right? These are going to be swing tunes. So like a lot of stuff off at the Pink Rat you know, and our other records. So
I will tell you, I really undecided. I love undecided. That is a killer track. I have that one on repeat a lot. That one really does just really carries. Now the Royal brain fart. I'm sorry. Like I said, the God, what was it? The Royal Street Swing Down. I was sitting there swirling.
yeah,
I'll get it out right. Now, I found that very interesting because I hadn't even read your description, and when I started listening, I was like, "Damn, this has got a New Orleans vibe to it, like a
yeah,
real brassy, like that, just gritty." I was like, "Damn!" And then I go back and read. You were talking about how that whole. I was like, "Well, shit, he just totally pulled that one off." Because I mean, I just heard those first few bars, and it was like, "Man, this is really, I mean, I'm in Missouri, and here." The Mardi Gras, we have a huge Mardi Gras here, not like New Orleans. So you hear a lot of that around here. So it was like, really, that was. Is that going to be, or is that you're just doing strictly single? Because I know that's just a single, but is that going to be on the album too?
it is. It
It
is.
is.
It'll be on there. I mean, one of the things I wanted to do with the record, this particular at the Pink Rat, was to touch on some styles that I hadn't touched on as much, right? There's a couple of songs where we use banjo and tuba as bass, and not like we're talking hot jazz, ragtime kind of,
Mm-hmm.
and then we also did some 40s kind of typical swing kind of the like undecided that era, right? The post-war or during World War II jitterbug kind of. We don't usually do that kind of
Yeah.
thing, so that was in there. We just trying to tick off some. The New Orleans thing is where the birthplace of jazz, and that second line kind of thing, and that's sort of what it's about. And some of my very favorite musicians are like I was a big fan of Dave Bartholomew and you know just a ton of New Orleans stuff, you know. So you can't leave New Orleans out. And
Yeah.
this is that song is about you know, kind of spiritual voodoo and you know that underside of New Orleans and or just basically communicating with the spirit world through, in this case, crows. And that's what that one was, you know, about. So
And that's interesting. Now, you speak the ragtime. That I love ragtime music. It gets looked over a lot. It is very foreshadowed. Yeah, now, were you
well,
guys
jazz
using?
comes out of it.
Yeah, and were you guys using the old? Honest to goodness, my grandparents had them in their basement. They had a couple old ragtime player pianos, and I'm sorry, but how that sound? I just gotta know, is that what you guys were using? Because it
Yeah,
sounds so amazing.
we did the recording. The first of all, the player who played on it is named Andrew Oliver, and he lives in Portland, and he's an aficionado of Jelly Roll Morton and ragtime players. He's a fabulous player, right? And we recorded up there with him up in Portland at Fremont Recording, and they had a stand-up. He has a beautiful stand-up piano in his studio, so he played this you know, incredible you know. You know, just like unbelievable. And he's sort of like me. He's very well. He's even more so. He's very trained in, you know, traditional ragtime, but he also is able to kind of, you know, do his own thing with it. So he was a perfect person to do these songs with. And you know, like I said, there are touchstones that, you know, trying to get the whole width and breadth of jazz of the 20th century in our sound and what we can do with those particular things and what we would use like one of the last song on the record has not been streamed yet. We'll stream that soon. It's called When You're a Clown. And it's about how everybody is afraid that they're a clown.
Hmm.
And you know, and he just is magnificent on this stuff. He's just like a fabulous player, you know, and yes, he plays on an upright piano. It has different sound. Sometimes in the studio that we record in, we've recorded tack hammer piano, but we've taken the grand. There's a grand in the studio a baby grand in at the studio that we record in. And in order to get that sound, we take pencils and put it on the strings. So it, you know, and just sort of stick the pencils on and record with the pencils, and it gives it that tack hammer sound. He doesn't want actual tacks in the hammers of the piano.
Yeah, yeah,
But we
okay.
just took number two pencils and put them on the strings, and it sounds like that, you know. But this, obviously, it's better to have a stand-up piano and a guy who can play the hell out of it. So, like
Yeah,
Andrew
because
Oliver.
it's very, and it's not just, it takes very, very unique stand-up pianos. I've used to have double pump organs and all that stuff, and those ragtime ones, they just have a certain characteristic and feel. It's not every upright can pull up, and that's why I was like, listen to me, I was like, holy crap, I stopped back and I started track over, and that was like, it's like, yes, and it's like, you can hear people do it, but you actually brought back that. Yeah, you've got the authenticity of that ragtime piano, and that is something that when people play it now, you don't get that authentic sound that like you were able to. So that was I did want to bring it up. That was
But it's only you know, there's some aspects of the record that are like that. You know, it's not the whole record. The whole record
no,
is
no, yeah,
all over the place. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's just like that piano sound. That's where I'm focusing because, like I said, I break stuff down, and the actual tone of the piano is that tone you have is not.
It gives you like the stand-up bass or something. It gives you this, you know, haunted feeling. You know,
Yes.
it's a part of giving this haunted vibe, you know, that underlies what I'm talking about. You
Hmm.
know, it's kind of like being, like I said, being in an old house. It's like you're doing your normal things, but you live in an old house, and someone has lived here before, and there are creepy reminders of the olden days around you, but you're not paying attention to them. Maybe, you know, you're having an argument with your, you know, spouse about something, and but next to you is the hole where the old wood fire, you know, place was used to be, you know, and that's in the shot. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like what it's like. Some of these old musical decisions, like the drum kit or the piano or whatever being in there, they give a tone that you noticed and other people will notice. And that idea is to give a sense, in my way of looking at things, to give a sense that the things that are happening today have antecedents in the past and connections to the past. And sometimes they're creepy, but what's happening today with me, whatever I'm going to do after I leave this, has something to do with what my grandparents did in 1924. They they had stuff going on, and what's happening to me today is still because of that. There are echoes from what uh, in the song, one of the songs on the record, I say uh, uh, there's future. What is the line? There's future faces. There's future faces, but so it's crucial to do well, because the whole point of there are these future faces out there that are going to hear this music. They're going to inherit what you did today, how you treated people today, what the work you did, and that is going to echo throughout time. And so these stir of echoes from the past, these sounds, these musics are alive, and they're having a giant effect on your day. That's what I think. My day, right? And so I'm trying to get that in the music itself. I'm trying to say, hey, Big Spider Bee, Big Spider Beck, and the threat to democracy now. There was a threat to democracy. There's a set threat to democracy in the United States now. There was then too. And we're connected in time, right? And that's one of the things I try to get across. But that's why I'm interested in old music, to use it as another character in the whole thing.
So it was actually, I guess one thing is, it was actually, you didn't go into because, oh, it's fun, you want to do it. You went into it with this is why I'm doing it, with a whole different perspective. Is that you went into it not just because you want to make swing music, but you want to take something and just go differently?
Yeah, I wanted to. I mean, I guess it's an outgrowth of how I feel about you know the world or whatever. I mean, that's to not use, like I told my daughter the other day, I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in New York State, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of slate in New York State. There's flat rocks in New York State, right? I live, in upstate New York, and there's, skipping rocks. You can skip rocks because a lot of them are slate, right? Um, and out here, there's no fucking slate rocks. There's no flat rocks. It's all igneous rocks. They're all round and from volcanoes. I live in the shadow of a volcano. You know, uh, there's something about when I cross. If you're driving across Texas, say, and you cross that big bridge into Beaumont, Texas. Well, that bridge, as you cross it, it's the west, and then you cross the bridge, and you're on the other side, and you're on the east. It's a fucking weird thing. There's a different echo. It feels different. You know, there's something about the east that is different than the west. And so these. I noticed that. I noticed things like that. It's like rocks and humidity and smells and the ways people react to things. Like West Coast people, like in the Northwest, people are nice, but they're not very kind. On the East Coast, people are not very nice, but they're kind. Like I grew up in a place where people are not nice at first, but they will jump on a grenade for you. Here they'll be super pleasant to you, but forget the grenade, man. You're on your own. These are things that I've seen in my time on Earth, and I want to talk about in an artistic way, and in a unusual way. How do you bring it up? How does a slate rock have anything to do with whatever is happening here? Well, that's the art. How can I work that in? And that's what I'm trying to do. All the past the present, the future. It all weaves in, hopefully,
Yeah.
try to find a way.
So, and like I said, this is you've got a lot going on with recording. I don't know how much more recording you've had going on. I know you've been discussing possibly going on tour. How is that looking? Do you have any idea on how that's looking?
Well, we're basically doing weekend warrior type things. We fly out to a play, if somebody gives us an offer, we'll take it and we'll play like Friday and Saturday and, Missouri and fly home, and that's kind of what we're doing. Performing arts centers. We won't do a bus tour kind of thing and play, basically the ska music is a I like doing it, but there's no money in it.
Hmm.
Nobody's interested in it. But the swing stuff, people are more interested in it. So we play, we go out there and play swing music. We sometimes we do large, swing dances, or we play I don't know, just performing arts centers or whatever. And so that's probably what's going to happen. We also do a thing like a Christmas show that's kind of about. We do it at Pearl Harbor every last did it last year. We'll do it this year. Sort of like swing music and some, music from the era and Christmas shit. And we dress up like we're GIs from the Eastern,
Oh, that's
or from
awesome.
the Pacific Theater, and it's kind of fun to do that. And then we're in Hawaii we do like a show, we do that show, and then we'll do some punk rock shows too. So we play ska, on the other islands or whatever. So it's just kind of random, splandum kind of stuff right now. I would love to get hit more places and be able to play a lot of the music that we are making. But, the music business is not, you have a big band and it's expensive to get them all flying around and doing things. It doesn't pay that well, as you know.
Yeah.
So,
It,
but
it is
would
a
love
lot
to
of
do it.
times. Yeah, a lot of times you're lucky to get enough gas money to get you to the next town for your
Yeah,
next pizza from the guy. Yeah,
you got it.
yeah, yeah. So, and I can only imagine. Yeah, you're running what, an 8 piece? Uh,
Yeah,
oh
we
God.
can we can play as a 7 piece, but it's getting any lower than that's pretty difficult.
Yeah, yeah, and I can't imagine trying to get because I mean, when you're dealing with rock music, you're 4 or 5 guys crammed in a van, and
Yep.
everything, and that's I can't imagine on top of because you got to be careful with those horns traveling too, man. Those horns, you can't get your horns damaged at all.
No.
So you've got those big, huge cases. It's not like your drums breaking down and stuff. So I can only imagine the calamity of trying to take that on tour is. Now, I want to again thank you for your time, and hopefully we can
Yep.
get you back. We can talk more about composition. I've enjoyed getting a chance to pick your brain. It's been very enjoyable, and for everybody, again, the links to their new streams, their YouTube, everything will be on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, please, there's a little red button. Picture it as Jake, and be Mike Tyson and punch for me. Just nail it, all right? And until again, guys, I will see you later. Take it easy. Peace.